Big Brothers Big Sisters of Delaware is a nonprofit organization that works with parents, guardians, volunteers, and others in the community to help children reach their full potential. It is their mission to provide children facing adversity with strong and enduring, professionally supported, one-to-one mentor relationships that change their lives for the better forever. Today, I'm pleased to introduce to you the new Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Delaware and longtime friend of our foundation, Mr. Tom Thunstrom. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and good day, everybody.
Tom has been a big supporter of youth for many years by volunteering at PFEW as a judge. In fact, Tom loves youth so much that he actually went to college to teach history. Tom, would you share with us how you went from being a teacher to running a nonprofit?
How much time do I have? I could go for hours about it, but I won't give the full 3-hour speech about my career. I initially wanted to teach history because that was what I was passionate about as a high school student. I had a really great history teacher back in Minnesota where I grew up, and thought, oh wow, I could go teach history and go teach it in high school because he did that. Well, I realized that teaching history in high school and being in front of high school students is not my thing necessarily, especially for a full-time thing. I love kids, but I couldn't do the teaching end of it. So as a result, I've kind of embarked on a long, windy career path and spent about 15 years of my career in banking because I was reasonably good with math. It was my fallback and I knew numbers. I was able to get a job in a bank in Minnesota. I was able to work my way up. Left that, bounced into nonprofit in Philadelphia for about 6 years. Loved the work. We did financial literacy. Made sense because it's working, with money and talking about money. Primarily worked with kids, sometimes with college students, sometimes with adults. Went back into banking for a while, but realized my heart and my passion is really working in the nonprofit sector. And just recently joined Big Brothers Big Sisters of Delaware as their executive director. We do mentorship. We work with kids and help them out as best as we can. So my heart and my passion is really on the nonprofit side of the fence to help kids, give them every opportunity that they can to be successful.
As Tom would like to tell you, shift happens. And one of the benefits of shifting your educational or career choice is that you get to experience a lot of new things. What would you say is one of the biggest risks you took in your career, Tom?
I would say that the biggest risk I took was going into nonprofit the first time back in 2005. The organization I joined at the time had struggled. They had gone through 2 directors in 2.5 years. They were heavily leveraged with one major corporate partner. That was the organization that I had just left, and they warned me, do not go there. We probably will not continue to fund them. It was a risky move on my part, and I essentially laid it out on the line. I said, treat this like a 1-year contract. If I don't hold up my end of the bargain, by all means, walk away. Don't give us another cent. Don't give us another dime. And I realized that it's a risk that I took, and it blew up on my face. Thankfully, that risk was a good risk, and it paid off. We were able to continue funding. We actually grew funding. And we're able to take a partnership with one institution in one city and expand it into other markets. We ended up working in Pittsburgh for a time with the same company, also in Baltimore and Washington. And it took several years of work to get to that point, but it was all through the power of leveraging relationships and building friendships with my foundation partners and my corporate partners in that organization.
And as we can see, those risks really did pay off for you. As you're now the executive director there at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Delaware, which is another great nonprofit that really promotes giving back to the next generation, just like our foundation does. So can you tell us what motivates you to want to help further the education of young people?
I think it's about giving them opportunity and giving them access to opportunities. One of the great things about PFEW that I've always liked is that it's a broad mix of kids throughout the state. So you've got kids from Philly, you've got kids from Pittsburgh, Erie, Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area, all throughout the Commonwealth that come in and spend a week learning about business. And some of these kids, when they walk in, know about as much about business as I do about TikTok. And it's, it's always like, it's cool to see them over the course of the week grow and learn and develop those skills of how to understand the basics of business, whether it's the marketing end of it or the finance end of it. And at the end of the week, they're in a much better spot. So in the work that we do, it's connecting volunteer adults to kids who are grown up in a non-privileged situation and help them, see what it's like to be successful and to have a role model to look up to. I think that giving kids that access and that ability to say, hey, I can be just like you when I grow up, it gives them a little bit of confidence, gives them a little bit of inspiration. And at the end of the day, hopefully they feel that they can aspire and be inspired to be the best of them that they can be.
Exactly. And, I'm sure your volunteer efforts and the networking that you've had with these organizations has helped you over the years. So for our audience here, what advice would you give them about how to be strong leaders in their own community or even in their own career fields?
Absolutely. So on volunteering, give back, give time, things that you're passionate about. Just don't volunteer because you feel like it's an obligation to do it, because you want to do it. Do it for organizations that you're passionate about. So if you're passionate about taking care of rescue dogs, go do that. If you're passionate about any particular cause or social issue that's going on, be passionate about it, get involved and be a doer. Give of your time, give freely of your time if you can, but build relationships with those individuals. You never know when that person may become a job reference. They may become a potential coworker. They may become somebody that you end up hiring down the line. We are all connected at some point and in some way. I've been able to leverage relationships that are 8, 9, 10 years apart, that I haven't been in contact with somebody for 10 years, and I end up reaching out to them because I have a question or I need something, because, that person's got a skill that I remember from either being a former coworker or somebody that I worked with at some point, and I know I'm going to need them for something. So those relationships you build are critical as you work through life, not just the Facebook friends or the follows on Instagram. It's, it's the day-to-day people that you hang out with in the office or in different office locations if you're in a bigger company that, they may operate in a number of places throughout the country.
Exactly. And I know, especially being at PFEW, it's those relationships that we find with our students that are so important. And, being able to foster the mentorship relationships as well as the, peer friendships is definitely a big part. And you, of course, see that being a volunteer with us for so many years. Are there any other words of wisdom, advice, or motivation that you can give to our audience about, how to be successful?
Yeah, a couple of them that I'll give you out of the gate. Number one, as Amber said, shift happens. You will need to adapt in life. My degree's in history. I ended up in banking and in nonprofit work. And at one point I worked in consultative work with University of Delaware. My career's pivoted. The skills you learn in college, they may not necessarily be the degree-oriented skills that you're going to use throughout your life. So my degree's in history. I still love history. I read a lot of history, but I haven't used any of that in terms of job. If you look at my resume, none of my jobs are in the history realm. I don't teach. I don't work in a library or in any sort of museum. But I learned how to write and I learned how to communicate very well through that degree, and I've been able to use it. So you may not necessarily take what you learn in college, as your day to day, but be prepared to be adaptable. Be prepared to shift and pivot maybe more than once throughout the course of your career. And also, don't burn bridges on the way out of a former employer if you change jobs. Make sure you leverage those relationships. You never know when you're going to need them again in the future. You never know when you're going to need to lean on that knowledge bank to help you out with something in your career. So, take advantage of those friendships and those work relationships that you make and run with them, because you may need them in 10 or 15 or 20 years down the line.
And that's all great advice. And, we can't thank you enough, Tom, for what you do, not only for our organization, but for the youth in your own community. We truly appreciate it. And, we thank you for being with us here today.
No problem. Thank you. It's sad to a point not being up in Williamsport this year. I understand it, but you know what? We'll be up there next year. We'll have some fun, and, stay safe, everybody, this summer, and, make sure you wear a mask out in public.
Great advice. For those of you who might be interested in reaching out to Tom to learn more about Big Brothers Big Sisters or how you can get involved in your community, you'll find his contact information at the end of the video. Thank you again, Tom, for joining us.
Thank you, Amber.
All right. Thanks for watching. Take care.